All right. I'm here with James, the writer and director and co-star, because he has a bit part in it, of Lost Phoenix. And I gotta tell you, man, this is a great way to start the new year. I really enjoyed this movie, and I like the little twists and turns, and even the fight scenes were really good.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. It's been 3 long years making this movie. So hearing that it's like, hey, you made a pretty I enjoyed your movie. It's like, thank you. It's just yeah.
So the first question is, what was the idea? How did you come up with the idea for this movie? What was your inspiration behind it?
So 2020 was not a good year in case no anyone had forgotten. But basically, like it's the middle of the year, everything's bad, and I had this really, really like dark, twisted little thought. What would it be like if you woke up now and you had amnesia? And what it was, you have no idea how the world got this way. You have no idea what the world was like before any of this. So this is the only world you know. And then I did one more like, well, what if you also had no documentation proving who you are to tell you who you are? And the idea just kept on snowballing to something way, way scarier. And eventually I'm like, I should just turn this into a movie because I had been working on another feature, which should have been my first feature, but the pandemic ultimately killed it. And so this has taken that film's place.
That's awesome. And I gotta tell you, this actor Wan DraL, who plays
Mhm.
Isaac slash Joe, he kind of has this resemblance to Jimin Honsu. Like when I first saw him, that's like the first thing I thought, like this guy could be Jimin Honsu's brother because he kind of looks like him. But he's got some nifty moves on him. How did you discover him? How did you get to meet him and all that?
So funny thing, he and I actually lived in the same building together. I was so for that film that died, we were filming a scene for that movie in part of my building, and so I go down to the lobby to meet the actress in the scene, and I see her talking to this guy. Like, okay, this guy's like, walk up. This dude's like really sharply dressed, introduces himself. He's like, oh yeah, you make movies. I really want to get into acting. He dabbled in modeling a little bit, and so, we got to talking, we exchanged numbers. And the thing is, though, all the roles in the movie were taken. So that was kind of that. But I never forgot him. I every so often I kind of like see him around and share an elevator. But I'm like, man, it's like, and when the idea for this film came up, I thought, I should talk to him. I should like let's go hang out by the fire pit outside where it's safe. We can have our masks off. And we started talking about the project, started talking about movies, and eventually I kind of like offered him, as he thought, a role in the movie. He didn't quite realize it was the role in the movie. So when I told him, "Oh yeah, you'd be playing the lead," he's like, "What? Like, are you sure?" I'm like, "Dude, it's cool. I'm good at working with like new actors. I'm good at like, I have a lot of experience doing that. I'll make you look good." Which in hindsight was a really, really cocky thing to say. But I think that he and I worked together really well. So I was able to kind of like get a really good performance out of this guy who honestly never acted before. But on his part, he really did double down on the movie. Like he started to like watch like interviews with actors and try to get a sense of what their process was and try to get a sense of like how do you create a character. And then he also started working with a friend of his who was a kickboxer to really like make his kicks and his form look better. So throughout the production, like yeah, he really got serious about this movie. And so yeah, I think like if he wanted to, I think he could go all the way. And the Jaime Hansu thing, yeah, I noticed that like right off the bat. But also, depending on the angle, he also kind of looks, if he's like smiling, he kind of looks a little bit like Taye Diggs.
Yeah,
And also a little bit like if Mike Coulter, if you kind of did like, like a shrink on Mike Coulter, he kind of looks a little bit like Mike Coulter too. So I'm like, why would I not put this guy in the lead role of the movie? Like tons of charisma. He can do the fighting. Um, I think that if he got like serious about acting and started like going to like classes and whatnot to like expand his range, yeah, dude could do a lot of
yeah. I
amazing things.
think yeah. I was saying. I think I wrote that in my review. I was like, we got a new star in the making. We can have a new star in the making here because like I didn't like I found out this was his first film. I was like blown away because I'm like he like you said he brought this charm to the role, and especially when he's with Barbara, in the and
Yeah.
just talking to her, and it's all like just natural. It just naturally flowed. It wasn't like forced or anything. It's like his interactions aren't forced. He just like really gets into it, and I think that's what really helped.
Yeah, sometimes there's a benefit to being kind of new at this because you don't, especially if you're comfortable. Like this was his first movie. Tom Strong, the big dude, this was also his very first time acting. Rashid, the guy who does Capoeira, it's not his first time acting, but it's the first time doing a movie like this. And you know, as long as you can kind of bring the personality, as long as you're comfortable in your skin and kind of inhabiting these characters, I think you can do really well. It's when you psych yourself out. You'll have a newer actor who will just kind of like get really insecure, they'll get psyched out, and then they just start flubbing their lines and they get like anxiety and it snowballs, and eventually it's just like, how do we salvage the scene? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I never really had that issue with any of those guys. Like they just came in, they were in their element on camera, and you could absolutely tell.
Yeah, and I really like Tom and Rashid because they were like the comic relief of the film. They were going off on each other. They kept going like they were like a comic team practically, and especially Rashid doing the little one jabs, calling him, you look like you come from the Expendables. What's what that? I was like, I started laughing when I heard that.
That wasn't even in the original script. We just kind of showed up. I'm like, I feel like you guys need to like pick on each other a little bit as you're getting out of the car. And so I'm like, well, you tell him he looks like he's one of the Expendables. You tell him he looks like he's homeless, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I in the original script, there wasn't as much of that interaction. So there were points when I'm like, I'm just going to invent a scene whole cloth because I feel like I want to spend more time with these characters and really kind of let them bounce off each other a bit more.
Yeah, even Marcus Lawrence as Gunner, he's the really tough henchman guy. But
Mhm.
there's a little scene with Talbot where he's more like he is playing off of him, like he gets played off of him by Talbot, and I thought that brought a little bit of comic relief as well to the film, and I think that really worked as well.
What I think is really neat about Gunner is I don't know how well this comes through, but I've watched the movie literally 1,000 times while editing. Gunner's a colossal screw up. Like everything he does just completely falls apart. And by the end of the night, he's literally lost four guys, the guy he was supposed to be hunting, and the only thing he has to show for it is one dead pill dealer. And so it's like, yeah, he looks tough because Marcus is like, he's a personal trainer, he's a big guy, but at the same time, it's like, man, this guy can't do anything right. He's like, as Marcus puts it, Gunner is a henchman who doesn't realize he's a henchman.
Exactly. I think that's the perfect way to describe it. And I gotta say, kudos also goes to Eliza Kelley as Layla.
Oh
She
yeah.
was ruthless just from her very first scene. This just shows like she brings this ruthless nature, and I really like her backstory once we realize why she's doing what she's doing as a sniper. And kudos goes to her. She did a phenomenal job on this film as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so Eliza actually came in kind of later in production. So this movie actually started as a proof of concept short before we went to go make the full feature. And the actress who originally played Layla in the short, she was like on board for the rest of the feature. But then you kind of realize like, yeah, this is a lot. There's a lot more that goes into it. Like there's a lot more demands for a feature, and eventually she had to drop out, and I'm like scramble 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 to try to find a replacement. And I started like talking to Eliza. I mentioned like, hey, I'm trying to recast this badass sniper woman role, and she was like, well, I'll take it. Like, aren't you SAG? She's like, no, I'm not. I'm eligible. I found out like I didn't cast her immediately because I thought she was SAG, and then I found out, oh, you're not in the union. All right, would you like to play Layla? You feel comfortable with a rifle in your hand?
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned that this film was a throwback to 90s B movie action, which is one of my favorite all-time favorite genres, and also the Hong Kong thriller.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite films from those particular genres? What do you consider your favorite films out of those, if you could pick any?
So for me, I'd say the most influential one would be, have you ever seen Time and Tide?
Yes.
Uh
Yes, I
yes.
have. I love that movie.
That yeah, I am so jealous of everyone in Europe because they have a Blu-ray of it, and we're stuck with this like 20-year-old DVD, or maybe it'll pop up on Tubi.
Yeah.
But that is one of like that's one of my go-tos. Also just like, and I kind of lean into Hong Kong directors, like Hard Target was another great example of just like that time period of like it's heightened, but at the same time it's not like pitched to 11, like in some cases it would be. um but yeah, basically just a lot of like the American Hong Kong crossover that time. I have you ever read Sheldon Ledge's book From Vietnam to Van Damme?
No, I haven't read that, but I plan like that now. Now that you mentioned it, I'm planning to find it. I'm gonna look for that book.
Good book, very good book, really informative. But one of the most fun parts is they were talking about the making of Double Impact, and it's like the John Woo was like a virus that was like tearing through that set. Like this dude Boaz Yakin, who came in to like rewrite the script, he and his brothers randomly went to the theater and watched Hard Boiled. And then there was like a videotape of the killer circulating around the set until it wound up in Jean-Claude's hands. And he's like, watches it next day, like, I have to fire 2 guns. I have to shoot 2 guns. I have to like roll and shoot 2 guns. Like, okay. It's really funny because that was like, Wu was kind of like, I don't say he came out of nowhere, but like, once you started learning about his movies, like, Tarantino knew about it, then Rodriguez knew about it, you get Desperado, and then, Van Damme learns about it, and you get Hard Target. And and then, a few years later, we all started to realize this Jackie Chan guy is amazing. We should really start paying attention to him. But yeah, that was a really cool time. Or even like Mortal Kombat. Like Robin Shou just brought Hong Kong style action with him.
Yeah.
And no one expected it. Like, it's crazy to think that the reptile fight and the scorpion fight were part of reshoots that were done by him.
Yeah. And then even in the 80s, we had Jackie Chan's schoolmate Corey Yun. He actually came to the US and did No Retreat, No Surrender, which was one of Van
Yeah.
Damme's first roles. So that was one of the first films to also have Hong Kong choreography in it. So that's what really helped as well.
I'm originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and there is a movie, one of these Hong Kong American crossover movies called Super
I
Fights.
know this one very well. It's one of my
Oh, you know this one? Oh man, we're gonna get along real well. Yeah, it's so wild, man. Because like I saw it back in the day, and like didn't quite hit me. Like, oh, I've been to these places. But then I rewatched it as an adult, and number one, that movie is it's just insane. It is absolute pure insanity. But it's really funny watching, like, oh, I used to live 3 blocks from that dumpster that the guy just fell into. That room where the guy gets decapitated by a ceiling fan. Like, yeah, I think I've walked past that building. It's really weird to know that they made like some Hong Kong filmmakers came and made an action movie in your town where
Yeah.
literally nothing else gets made.
Yeah, I think they're the same company who did No Retreat, No Surrender, seasonal films. They actually did a series
Yes.
of films in the US. They did No Retreat, No Surrender, Super Fights, Blood Moon. They did in Wilmington, North Carolina, and New York City. And like those movies, like I don't know why they don't get as much love as it should, because though that choreography is amazing.
We need MVD or Vinegar Syndrome to give us like a steel case like Blu-ray edition of Super Fights. I mean, get like a lock of Rob Van Dam's hair. I don't know. Like, let's make something happen, because yeah, I agree, man. That movie, just thinking about it makes me laugh, because it's like, I don't know. It's really immature, and yet it also is graphically violent, and it's a lot. It's also really horny,
Yeah,
um, which is the kind of thing you could only really make in the late '80s and early '90s.
exactly. And I got
Yeah,
and for a while I had kept in touch with one of the stars of that movie. I actually kept in touch with Chuck Jeffries
yeah.
for a few years, who played Dark Cloud. And I remember when I was stunned when I found out that he was the fight choreographer on Freddy versus Jason of all films. So I was like,
Blade.
yeah, and I was like, yeah, and Blade, and he was like Wesley Snipes' go-to guy for like a number of years. And I know that he was influenced by doing all the Hong Kong stuff and everything. And it just shows like
Oh,
what a small world the action world can be.
So if I run into Chuck Jeffries and I, ask him to sign like a VHS copy of Super Fights, is he gonna look at me like go away, or is he gonna be cool about this?
I think
What are his
I think
thoughts about
knowing him the way I knew him, he would definitely be cool about it because
it?
I think he's a guy who I know he would take pride in the stuff he does.
Because honestly, man, the action in that movie is solid. Like it's really good. It's also where I learned about the term stunt leg. Um, yeah. So I actually for Lost Phoenix, we actually did like a stunt leg. But it's like the most low tech, the most cheap version of it. At one point, Rashid, who's doing capoeira, has to kick Juan in the face.
Yeah,
And I thought, okay, well, the moves all look good, but the connection doesn't quite fit. So let's get like a real close up of like the shoe
the
like
impact to
hitting
it. Yeah.
him. So I literally took the pair of similar looking pants, put them on my arm, sock, shoe, and just like kind of like at a very like gentle pace, hit him in the face with the shoe that was on my hand, and that made it in the movie. And kind of just it adds that little bit of extra oomph
It does.
that impact needed.
Yeah, a great example of the stunt leg was Jackie Chan's "Who Am I" when he's facing Ron Smorgasburg on the rooftop, and then all of a sudden Ron Smorgasburg starts he's supposed to be like doing all these kicks and under a beam, but it turns out it was a stunt leg. 'Cause I saw the making of it. You actually see the stunt man like doing a sweep leg, then grabbing the stunt leg, and I think at one point he hit Jackie in the face so hard, and then another one the shoe flew off and ends up in the canal in Rotterdam. So it was like.
It's like since the stunt like flies off the side of the building, like, all right, well, do we have a second one? No. All right, send the PA down to get it. I started to notice more and more of that kind of stuff. Like there was, I think it was on, I want to say it was Flashpoint with Donnie Yen.
Yeah,
I swear I saw one bit where Colin Chu takes a knee to the face, and if you like freeze frame it, you can tell that it's not actually Donnie's leg.
yeah,
It's like a stunt leg, and you can kind of see like the pants like not quite like ending like they're you can almost see like the seams of that particular effect, but it's like it's pretty brilliant. I mean it works. You can get that impact, you don't have to worry about hurting your actor. And also just you end up with like really really great on-set photos of people standing around with like fake limbs, or even like a rubber fist you put over your real fist so you can make physical contact.
exactly. So you also did the fight choreography on this film, and so
Yep.
what's your back? Now that comes to my next question. What's your background? 'Cause I would love to know what that is.
um Kind of a jack of all trades. I've taken Taekwondo, I've studied kickboxing, Wing Chun, um, mostly those things. Um, but a lot of what I learned was kind of like geared toward action scenes, because I started making action movies, like no budget action shorts in college, back in like 2005. So I've been doing this a while, but I would always try to learn cool stuff and try to figure like, how do I apply this in a movie? What can I learn that's going to make me a better fight choreographer? But also, a big part of it was like finding out what skill set do my actors bring, and how do I use that as best as possible. Like I think early on we did try to do a little bit of that kind of like Hong Kong style handwork, and it just didn't work. Like it requires a lot of training, a lot of experience,
Mhm.
and a lot of time, and we just didn't have those things. So I'm like, all right, let's like dial down the complexity, but dial up the impact, and also still try to shoot it like a Hong Kong fight. And I think that kind of works, because the fights sometimes it's just fun to watch two guys knock the crap out of each other. They don't necessarily need to be super graceful. Kind of has a lot more in common with stuff like a Van Damme movie, or stuff like Only the Strong, like those, as Hong Kong influence was seeping into Hollywood, right? And the fights were getting a little bit more interesting, a little bit more impressive, but they weren't quite there. We weren't bringing Yunwo Ping over yet, but
Right.
we were doing our best to ape his style.
That's awesome. And you also got a big sword fight in the finale, which was really cool. I mean, so how did that come about? Like, did you have to train them to use the sword, anyone, or they just like naturally?
So that was not originally supposed to happen. Like a lot of the budget was a determining factor in a lot of things. Like um the ending changed a lot over time. A lot of aspects of the film changed a lot. But David Norton, who plays Richard Talbot, he is trained in Japanese sword. He's an Iaido practitioner. So he came in, he's really good with a sword, and you can see it in his form. Like
Oh yeah,
he's got a lot of discipline there.
yeah,
And so I'm like, okay, Juan was like had a lot of experience with like fight choreography on account of this movie. So I had David kind of work with him to kind of help get his form and get him up to snuff, knowing full well that Juan's character was not going to be anywhere near as disciplined as David's character. But even so, like David kind of like did the training for Juan, and that's how that came about. The ending was originally so different. Like David's character wasn't even supposed to have a fight, and then as the shoot went on, and I was editing while I was shooting, I'm like, it seems like a terrible waste not to have it end like this. So like, all right, I'm gonna make use of Sensei David Norton's sword fighting abilities, and he just loved getting to do that.
yeah. I think that was. I mean, I think that was a great surprise because you figure throughout the film like he's just the mastermind. You didn't think you would never imagine like a mastermind usually having action. He always gets someone else to do it, but in this case, to have him come out and just unleash his sword attacks were just. I was like, my mouth dropped. I'm like, oh man, like this guy is good. And
Oh
then
yeah.
and the fact that now knowing that he trained Wall in the sword, it reminded me of how Uma Thurman trained with Sonny Chiba for Kill Bill. She trained with him in Kenjutsu for her sword fight, which was really, and she looked really good with the sword
Oh
in
yeah.
that film.
It was really interesting because I kind of wanted to build his character up as he's this guy who tries to get people to let their guard down and then goes on the attack. So he'll kind of present himself as like an affable like uncle or affable father figure before like going in for the kill. But you still go into the finale thinking, oh, he's a psychological threat, but he's not a physical threat until the very end when it's like, no, he's been playing everybody this whole time, and and at that point he's like the most dangerous character in the movie.
Man, yeah, exactly. Overall, man, this was a fantastic movie. My next question is, I know that you had shot for a long time, you kept changing the script, but were there any other factors that were plagued during production? Like, did anyone ended up getting sick, or did anyone, or was it just pretty much smooth sailing besides having to change so much?
I mean, considering all the things that could have gone wrong, this production actually went really smoothly. Nobody got sick until like the second to last shoot, which ironically took place in a doctor's office. Um, that was that was where COVID finally got me.
Oh,
But
yeah.
aside from that, we've been shooting at that point, we've been shooting for nearly 2 years and not so much as a sniffle. And then it's like this is the thing that got me. But yeah, for the most part, like we ran into some issues, like when the actress who originally played Layla dropped out. That led to having to reshoot a lot of stuff, having to do some rewrites. She also at one point, so it's like, we're spoiler talking at this point. Rashid with Seth was supposed to be in the finale, but unfortunately he had a scheduling conflict at the last minute, and I had to choose, like, do I postpone the shoot or do I hastily rewrite the scene? And I hastily rewrote the scene, gave all of his dialogue plus all the weapons to Gunner. So that's why he basically shows up with a pistol, assault rifle, and two swords. Like, this dude's there's even a cut line where Isaac, says he's a little overdressed.
Oh man, that would have worked. I could see that too.
But yeah, so the thing is, when you make a movie like this, you can't really get precious about stuff. You have to be adaptable. You have to be ready to change at a moment's notice. If like, oh, this location didn't work out, or the fight between Isaac and Roman in the workshop, that we had already choreographed that. We pre-visited, get to the location, realize this choreography is not going to work in here. We don't have, this isn't the correct space. So I literally on the day had to start, like, I didn't have to re-choreograph from scratch, but I had to reshuffle and remix and rework all the different moves. So that fight was like, I'd say about 70% of it was created on the day.
Oh wow, it looks
Yeah.
good though. I gotta tell you, that looked good. The different weapons they and that reminded me of Jackie Chan because they're using the environment as to try to one up each other. And of course, you have different types of weapons that they had or different type of tools that they had to use. I mean, I think that really worked, and that's
Oh
surprisingly
yeah.
that it
And
was
my
like,
thing was like, get the weapons in their hands as soon as possible, because that's what people want to see. But I will say the Superman punch, in hindsight, terrified me, because if in the shot, might even be able to see it in the shot. There's a garage door track, and Juan got some serious height on that jump. And in hindsight, I'm looking up like, I am so glad you didn't bang your face into that track while you were throwing that
oh my
Superman.
god, yeah, I noticed it. Like, and that surprised me. That was one of the best Superman punches I've seen in films, let alone anything. Because yeah, you mentioned it, he's got the height, and the way he just like popped up like that, I was like,
Yeah.
wow, like this guy's got.
And like in hindsight, like occasionally, like they'll like shiver, like, oh god, I almost like broke my actor's like skull for the scene. I think he realized it was up there, so he was cognizant of it, but it still there's that whole like, oh my god, that could have been so bad.
Yeah.
Um, in hindsight.
And there was also that nice little exchange between Isaac and Layla in the apartment, which brought that little gung
Yeah.
fu like John Wick equilibrium type thing about that. So how what was the influence behind that that particular fight, the little gun fu fight that we got, like that we get?
So originally it was a lot simpler. He was just gonna like snatch the gun out of her hand, and she would like go for the other gun. And I think I don't know if I did this on the day. I think I kind of pre-planned it, but I kind of on the day we actually fully choreographed that exchange. Like I figured, you know, Eliza only gets like gunfights after this. So I wanted to give her like a good physical confrontation. And so we kind of like came up with that after a full day of doing audio. I like doing not doing audio, doing dialogue scenes. Because that whole sequence was done in that one day. And it's like 8 pages of movie in one day is a lot.
Yeah,
And then to like cap it off with, oh, we're gonna have like a cool fight, and it's gonna
that's
have to
awesome.
be this like really like intense standoff at the end.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I think Layla should get a spin-off movie because she, I mean, her character was so important to the film, and to see everything that happened, like it would be cool if she ever had a spin-off about what happened with her, and then even have like her brother as the major character in it. And I like that's an idea. I just throw that out of the top of my head, but that
Thank you, because Eliza's gonna love hearing that too. But my whole thing was I wanted to make Eliza's character. I want to make Layla so interesting that if we flipped it and made the movie about her character, it would be just as good, if not better. And if I've said to myself, if I'd have actually had more money, I would have tried to shoot more material and probably get like her perspective on what's happening too. I probably would have just like beefed up her part, because I think that would kind of add even more texture to the movie.
that's awesome. So with that said, I mean, so there's Lost Phoenix getting released this month. Have you heard anything about is it finally, are we finally gonna get to see it worldwide? Like,
So it's looking like it's gonna drop on January 10th on Amazon, Google Play, and YouTube Rentals. Going through a company called Indie Rights. They've actually been really awesome so far. If you're making a feature film and you want to get it distributed, maybe talk to them. They're actually pretty cool. But I'm really excited for people to finally get to see this, especially after like, because here's the thing. Like I said, I watched this thing like 1,000 times because I was also the editor and colorist and sound. I wore all the hats. I cannot objectively tell if this movie is good anymore. So I'm like, please tell me. Even if it's bad, tell me, because I can't tell anymore. but I have noticed like there's a pretty consistent all the reviews we've gotten so far have been pretty consistent. Like this is a very B plus action movie, which is kind of awesome because B plus action movies are just fun. Like, yeah, sometimes you want to watch like an A plus thing, you want to watch Speed, or you want to watch like Predator or The Matrix, and sometimes you just want to watch Kickboxer, or
Exactly.
you just want to watch Eraser and watch Arnold dual wield railguns.
Or any of those PM entertainment films from the
Oh
90s. I
man,
mean, those are just any of those, like good popcorn action flicks. Like we need more of those, not a lot of the Hollywood, the studios, they want to make these epic action flicks.
yeah.
I'm okay with just watching something that'll just make me want to just grab a popcorn and just watch it and just enjoy it, like Kickboxer or Bloodsport or like a PM or super fights, something like
Yeah.
along the lines of that.
I feel like the indie side of things, because I like devour any indie action movies I can find. So I was watching stuff like, Paper Tigers and Unlucky Stars. And there's this movie from 2020 called Money Fight by James Boss. And it's cool because these are movies that Hollywood cannot make or will not make. And, as like filmmaking technology gets better, as like the tools we have get better, we can start really kind of like opening up the scope of what we do. Um, with this movie, I basically was using technology to keep the crew super small and super fast, so we could like, hey, we need to film in this location. We can film like 10 pages in here in a day. Whereas if it was a bigger shoot, it would be maybe 5 at best. And that's what allowed the movie to have all these different locations, all this different scope. So it doesn't feel like, we're confined. We're like running all over like a 3 mile radius of Richmond, Virginia for the majority of the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that indie kind of does bring perspectives that and like ideas, because how many of us grew up watching like Hong Kong movies and Korean. I'm a huge fan of like old 70s like hyper violent Japanese karate movies.
Yeah, me
Um,
too. I grew up watching Bruce Lee and the Shaw Brothers, I'm from New York originally, and then we used to have a show called Drive-In Movie. And when everyone used to go out, or the kids would go out to play after Saturday morning cartoons, I'd be home for another 2 hours watching Drive-In Movie, and there'll be something like The Five Deadly Venoms or Return to the 36th Chamber. Like I'll be watching that. Then I go outside because I grew up watching, like I have a love for those movies.
I mean, you had access to a Chinatown, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah, practically. Like,
That's the best. Like I didn't get to do that stuff until like I became like a cinephile in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And so I didn't, but I lived in like kind of rural Pennsylvania, no real access. But then the internet opened the doors. Like suddenly I found a site called pokerindustries.com,
oh yeah, I
and
know
I'm
that.
like
I've heard of that.
I'm like importing Battle Royale and the live action Crying Freeman with Mark Dacascos, and
Yep.
I just went
Oh
all
yeah.
in on this.
Well, where I lived about 45 minutes from New York City. So whenever I go to New York City, I used to go to when I was in college. That's when my love for martial arts and Hong Kong cinema really picked up. So I remember going to this video, like this one place. It was a convenience store in the front. They had the bootleg movies in the middle, and then you had the adult section in the back. I always go to the middle section. I would buy like Crying Freeman. I buy like the bootleg VHS, like Crying Freeman, all these other Hong Kong flicks for like two for $10 a pop. So I go in with an empty backpack, and then I have like a full one by the time I'm done picking my titles for the day.
At one point, because there were movies that just would not release on Region Zero or Region One, so I stupidly spent $300 on a region-free DVD player. And the quality of this thing was kind of like one of those $30 ones you buy in Walmart that just it sucked, but it would play things from all over. So I'm like, all right, I need to watch like Hero like a year before it comes out in the US.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
then
that,
yeah,
that
when I used to go to Chinatown, and then I also used to buy, like, I used to go to the DVD shops. Like a lot of them were Region Zero, so I'll be like, I'll just like picking them. And then yeah, there was a couple of cases where, like, if it was a Japanese film I really wanted to see, Region Two, I'd have to spend like 45 to $50 on it. And I think the last one I bought was a 2014 film called Taekwondo Damashi Rebirth. And it was like, it's about this group of Taekwondo experts who go into this haunted forest, and if you lose against like the spirits in there, you lose your soul. It was like this crazy Jap like Taekwondo. It was like the first I think it was like the first like major Taekwondo film from Japan, and it was actually pretty good. I liked it.
You need to like send me the information on that because that sounds exactly up my alley. But yeah, like that, I kind of grew up on those movies, and I'm just happy to finally have been like I can actually kind of contribute to that. Just these like take these inspirations, and I just want to be able to like now that I've got my first feature out of the way, um, kind of like grow from there because this one I decided to try to keep as simple as I could,
Mhm.
knowing full well I've never told a story that's longer than 15 minutes. So telling one it's like 85 minutes, you if you try to get too fancy with it, there's a real good chance you're going to fall on your face. So I chose not to do that.
Yeah,
And it seems to have paid off because like all I care about is like is this an entertaining movie? Doesn't have to be life changing. The script originally had a lot more kind of like deep themes, a lot more like social stuff going on, a lot like it was more overtly political. And throughout time, those elements were kind of either cut from the movie or they were kind of like jammed down into the subtext. So, and I was kind of bummed out, like, well, there's a bunch of cool ideas I had, didn't make it in. So I'm now trying to adapt it into a light novel so that I can kind of bring those themes back in. And I want to try to find someone to commission like a manga style cover for it, just to kind of like go with the full light novel motif.
nice. So on that note, are you trying to work on another feature film in the meantime? Like, do you have an idea that you want to do for your second feature?
Yeah, I'm actually about 30 pages into my next script. It's going to require more resources than this one did for sure. But yeah, it's also like a bigger idea. Now that I know what it takes to like tell a story like this. I know what it takes to, kind of like make it through a production like this. Um, I'm kind of like going in with much more experience so I can probably tell a more complex story with just and also keep it from going off the rails.
That's awesome. Well, everyone, you gotta check out Lost Phoenix. And really, if you just want a good popcorn action flick, you're gonna want to see this one. And as James said, it's coming out January 10th. Rent the movie. My recommendation: rent the movie. You're really gonna enjoy this one, and you're gonna see a new action star in the making. I think if Wan DraL keeps going, like he can really do it because he just brings up the charm, and he shows some nifty moves in this movie. And James, man, it's been an honor to talk to you about this movie and everything else.
Absolutely, man. It's great. It'd been great talking to you. It's always fun to get to talk about like just nerd out over these kinds of movies because it's like you find someone's like you know about Gary Daniels movies and PM Entertainment. We have so much to talk about now.
Yeah, it's funny. I for a while I used to get emails from him, and then sadly we lost him, but Darren Shalavi as well.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. He was such like one of the nice guys. I mean, you get to meet these guys, and or get to talk to them, and you just see like they're badasses on screen, but they're like the nicest guys off screen. So that's really awesome.
They got nothing to prove. They could beat up anybody in the room. They got nothing to prove at this point.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, James, and everyone check out Lost Phoenix on January 10th.
Thanks.